Welcome to Ghost Files, where the shadows speak and mysteries come alive. If you love chilling stories, haunted places, and the unexplained, you're in the right place. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated on the darkest tales from around the world. Let's dive into today's haunting. Pit Stop Panic. A night to forget. Rahul and his friends had been driving for hours, the excitement of their road trip to Goa slowly giving way to fatigue. It was late at night, and the GPS had led them down a deserted highway, the only solace being the occasional truck stop or doba. As they spotted a dimly lit pit stop ahead, they decided it was time for a break. Stretching their legs and grabbing some chai seemed like just what they needed. As they pulled in, the pit stop seemed eerily quiet, except for the sound of crickets and the distant hum of a generator. The neon sign creaked in the wind, reading Sai Service Station in flickering letters. The boys exchanged skeptical glances but shrugged it off, thinking it would be a good place to rest for a bit. The moment they stepped out of the car, they noticed something off. The fuel pumps looked old and rusted, and the attendant seemed to be watching them with an unnerving intensity. The chai stall next to the pumps was run by an elderly man with a scruffy beard, who greeted them with a toothy grin. As they ordered chai and began to stretch, strange noises started echoing from the back of the service station. It sounded like metal clanging, followed by muffled voices. The attendant seemed nonchalant, telling them it was just the mechanics working late. But Rahul and his friends couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. One of the friends, Rohan, decided to use the restroom while they waited for their chai. As he walked toward the small, dingy toilet block behind the main building, he noticed the door was slightly ajar. Pushing it open, he was hit with a wave of stench and darkness. Suddenly, he heard footsteps behind him and turned to see a shadowy figure looming in the doorway. "What are you doing here?" The figure growled, its voice sending shivers down Rohan's spine. Before he could respond, the figure vanished into thin air, leaving Rohan stunned and frightened. Rohan rushed back to the others, recounting what had just happened. They quickly gulped down their chai and decided it was time to leave. As they were about to pay, the attendant leaned in close and whispered, "You boys better get out of here before it gets worse. This place isn't safe at night." With that ominous warning, they hastily paid and got back into their car. As they drove away, they noticed the chai vendor waving frantically, his toothy grin replaced with a look of urgency. They didn't look back until they were far away from the pit stop, the neon sign fading into the darkness. When they finally stopped at a more populated area, they couldn't stop talking about the strange occurrences. They wondered what had really been going on at that deserted pit stop. Was it just their imagination playing tricks on them? Or was there something more sinister lurking in the shadows? From that night on, the story of the Sai service station became a cautionary tale among their friends, a reminder that some places are better left avoided, especially in the dead of night. The last ride of Ravi's taxi. Ravi had been driving his taxi, a worn-out Maruti, for over a decade. He knew every corner of the city, every shortcut, and every late-night spot where the party never ended. But Ravi's life wasn't just about ferrying passengers from point A to point B. He had a peculiar habit. Whenever he picked up a lone passenger, especially at night, he'd engage them in conversations about life, dreams, and fears. Over the years, he'd formed a sort of bond with many of his passengers, though most were just fleeting encounters. One rainy night, as the city huddled under the monsoon clouds, Ravi received a call from the taxi dispatch. A passenger needed a ride from the upscale part of town to the outskirts, where the city slowly gave way to darkness and open fields. The address intrigued Ravi. It was an old mansion on the fringes of the city, a place rarely visited by anyone, let alone taxi passengers. As Ravi pulled up at the designated pickup point, he saw a figure huddled under an umbrella. The figure quickly got in, shaking off the rain. Ravi noticed the passenger was dressed impeccably, almost as if heading to a party. But there was something unsettling about the way the passenger's eyes gleamed in the dim light. "Where to, sir?" Ravi asked, eyeing the passenger in the rearview mirror. "The Heritage Manor, please," the passenger replied in a smooth, low voice. "You know the place, don't you?" Ravi nodded, though he hadn't heard of it. The GPS led him down winding roads that grew progressively darker. The mansion loomed in the distance, its gates creaking open as Ravi's taxi approached. The driveway was overgrown, and the mansion itself looked abandoned, its windows like empty eyes staring back. As they reached the mansion, the passenger's demeanor changed. He leaned forward, his breath cold against Ravi's ear. "You know, I've been waiting a long time for this ride. It's been years since I've stepped out." Ravi felt a shiver run down his spine. "Sir, is everything all right? Do you need me to wait?" The passenger chuckled softly. "No need to wait, Ravi. This is the end of the line for both of us." Suddenly, the car's headlights flickered, and the engine sputtered. Ravi tried to restart the car, but it wouldn't budge. The passenger got out, his movements eerily calm. As Ravi watched in confusion, the passenger walked toward the mansion, which seemed to loom larger and more ominous with every step. The passenger turned back and waved, a gesture that seemed almost familiar. And then, in a flash of insight, Ravi remembered stories his grandmother used to tell him. Stories of souls trapped between worlds, waiting for the right ride to move on. The car started on its own, and Ravi, feeling an unseen force, drove away from the mansion as fast as he could. When he finally stopped to catch his breath, he noticed something. The taxi's rear seat was empty, but on the seat lay a small note. It read, "Thanks for the last ride." From that night on, Ravi's taxi was never hailed by a lone passenger again. People whispered about Ravi's encounter with the supernatural, and many avoided his taxi, fearing they'd be the next to take the last ride. But Ravi didn't mind. He knew he'd been part of something bigger, something that went beyond the streets he drove every day. Years later, taxi drivers would tell stories about Ravi and the mysterious passenger, about the ride that changed everything. And some say, on rainy nights, if you listen closely, you can still hear the sound of Ravi's taxi driving through the darkness, waiting for its next fare, but never finding one. The Photographer's Curse. Akash had always been fascinated by the old, abandoned buildings that dotted the city's outskirts. As a photographer, he saw beauty in decay, and his lens captured the haunting elegance of structures that others might call eyesores. His Instagram account, dedicated to urban exploration and decay, had gained a significant following, with many enthusiasts eagerly awaiting his next post. One day, while scouring the internet for inspiration, Akash stumbled upon an old forum post about a long-abandoned mansion on the outskirts of the city. The mansion, known as Ravenswood Manor, was rumored to have a dark history with tales of family tragedies and untimely deaths. Intrigued, Akash decided to explore the mansion and capture its beauty through his lens. after obtaining permission from the local authorities, Akash set out to Ravenswood Manor, armed with his camera and a sense of adventure. As he approached the mansion, he felt an eerie atmosphere, as if the building was watching him. The once grand entrance was now overgrown with vines, and the windows were boarded up. Akash carefully made his way inside, his footsteps echoing through the empty halls. As he began to take photographs, Akash noticed strange noises, creaks and groans that seemed to follow him. He tried to brush it off as the old building settling, but the sounds seemed to grow louder and more frequent. Despite the unease, Akash continued to capture the beauty of the mansion, his camera clicking away as he explored room after room. When he developed his photographs, Akash noticed something peculiar. In several of the images, there were faint, ghostly figures standing just out of focus. At first, he thought it might be a trick of the light or a glitch in the camera, but as he looked closer, he realized that the figures were always standing in the same positions, as if they were watching him. Akash couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. He began to research the history of Ravenswood Manor, delving into old newspapers and town records. What he discovered chilled him to the bone. The mansion had indeed been the site of a family tragedy, and the ghostly figures in his photographs were likely the spirits of those who had died there. As Akash shared his photographs online, he started to receive strange messages from his followers. Many claimed to have seen the ghostly figures in their own dreams or visions, and some even reported experiencing strange occurrences in their own lives. Akash began to feel a sense of unease, as if he had unleashed something malevolent into the world. One night, Akash received a mysterious package in the mail. Inside, he found a single photograph, an old faded image of Ravenswood Manor, taken decades ago. But what caught his attention was the figure standing in the doorway, a figure that looked uncannily like him. The photograph was dated long before Akash was born, and he couldn't shake off the feeling that he was being pulled into a dark and sinister world. From that day on, Akash's life began to unravel. He would find strange objects in his apartment, and his camera would capture images that he couldn't remember taking. The ghostly figures in his photographs grew more prominent, and Akash started to feel like he was losing his grip on reality. In the end, Akash's Instagram account went dark, and his followers were left wondering what had happened to the photographer who had captured their imaginations. Some say that Akash is still out there, trapped in the world of Ravenswood Manor, forever cursed to capture the beauty of decay and the horrors that lurk within.